this month. Each boat is worth millions, and teams only have one apiece, which is why they don't like doing this. We discover how the foils work on an America's Cup boat. We head to Palma before going to Miami. But first, they've been raced, rallied and thrashed.
It's very uncommon to destroy something that someone else has built so carefully.
And now the Volvo Ocean Race fleet is better, lighter and faster than before. But how? 40,000 miles, flat out, around the world. Always raced, always rallied, and always with the accelerator pressed firmly to the floor. The Volvo Ocean Race boats had a tough life last time round. Crews did their best to stay on top of routine maintenance and repairs.
You know what they say? A good guess is better than a bad measure.
Some boats were pushed harder than others and faced a bigger task to get their show back on the road. A tough life was what the identically matched Volvo 65s were designed for. But a high-mileage, pre-owned machine that has been flogged for 9 months by a crew on a mission might not be your first choice for a second lap of the planet. Yet this is exactly what is in store for teams in the next race. A race that will break new ground for an offshore fleet of high-tech, carbon fibre rocket ships. Of the 8 boats that will be on the start line this November, only one is brand new. And yet so far, none of the teams that competed in the last race have chosen the boat in the new wrapper, or indeed the boat that won the last race. Such is the confidence they have in the fully refitted fleet. Nick Bice describes himself as
Chief Technical Development Officer. I gave myself that name.
To everyone else, he's the boss. And the founder of the Boatyard. But whatever his title, Bice and his team broke new ground in the last race with a bold experiment. To maintain the entire 7-boat fleet with one shoreside operation that followed the race. A touring pit lane for the Volvo 65s. And a first for the offshore racing world.
So the Boatyard started off pre the 2014-15 race with the plan to help reduce the team's overall budget by offering services, pooling the spares, by basically grouping all those things that teams were doing individually to try and reduce that overall budget but not having an effect on the actual team's performance.
Like asking Formula One drivers to hand their keys to Bernie Ecclestone for a service and valet before the next Grand Prix. The plan was a bold one. Yet this is precisely what Bice's team did.
We had a pretty special system set up from the between the shore managers and us, being the Boatyard, and the suppliers as well. Essentially, the boat could send a job list to the shore manager. The shore manager would then input it into what we call a smart sheet, and that would generate reports that get sent to either the head of the department or the actual supplier in anticipation for what is coming up for the next stopover. We were servicing the boats for the leg coming up. So we were proactively servicing, not reactively servicing. So we gather that was around 95% of the servicing done was proactive and only 5% reactive. One design boats, it gave us the opportunity to be as open booked as we wanted. And those job lists that were being sent off the boats, I would print them out and stick them up in the Boatyard for the public to even see. So everyone knew exactly what was going on. In the past, it was an advantage or not, I'm not entirely sure, to keep secrets. And sometimes the boats arrive at the dock with the shore crew not knowing what to do because it's been such a secret.
But there are no secrets about what happens for the next race. The Volvo 65s were designed to do 2 races. Getting them ready for another circumnavigation involves stripping all 7 of the existing boats back to their birthday suits and rebuilding them from scratch. A €1 million refit per boat.
basically rebuilt the boats in this group refit that we've done in Lisbon this time round. We've done a lot of changes, but we haven't fundamentally changed the performance. We got rid of a fair bit of weight off the boat, to be honest. We could have spent a lot of money trying to put lifting foils on a boat that's a bit heavy, but it didn't seem the right thing to go and spend another $1 million on something that would give a 5% gain or something when it's one design. It's not the bit that's going to change whether it's a successful race or not.
But before they could rebuild the fleet, they had to build themselves a facility that could handle 7 large race boats in a row. No easy task. The answer was a disused fishery in Lisbon, converted into the Volvo pit lane and made ready for the Grand Prix production line.
So yeah, day one of this boat's refit, disassembly, where we've lifted the boat out of the water, taken the mast out, and we're going to set up to take the boat off the keel now.
So this boat now is in its 3rd week inside this bay. The boat builders are still doing some modifications to this boat, and the painters are getting all the paint off the deck, and they're going to start sanding the hull to get a bit ahead for when it rolls into the painting booth.
Now it takes 5 days to strip a boat when it comes into the first bay, and at this point in the process, now that we know it, it's probably 60% of the time it would take to do it if you were just, here's a container full of parts and let's start putting things together. So that's every 3 weeks another one rolls out, and it feels like you just got done with a tire change and here comes the B car in for a fresh set.
The hardest bit is probably the shaping of the boat. So once we've stripped off all the old branding, we then go into, we put the materials back on the primers, and then we go into the shaping where we use big long drain pipes with sandpaper on, 4 guys all together like this, and just sand and shape the whole boat up. That takes us about 3 days to do that, but that's probably the hardest bit.
A lot goes on in this bay. Every single component that was taken off the boat has been serviced and is now going back on. It's also getting tested, so every single department has a go on here. This boat's coming out of the spray booth in 3 days' time, and as you can see, it's looking very red, so you can guess which boat it is, but they've still got to do the final coat on it, they've still got to do the non-skid on the deck, and they've still got to paint a few components, all that in 3 days. So it's a massive, massive show of teamwork effort in here at the moment.
That red boat was Mapfre, one of the first to be relaunched in her new colours, ready for testing and crew trials. But despite the intense level of scrutiny, sometimes not everything goes to plan. Shortly after she was relaunched, Mapfre broke her mast during an offshore training run. A frustrating and acute reminder of the fine line that teams tread.
There's only one good thing. Nobody got hurt.
But sometimes the failures are intentional.
It's very uncommon to have the chance to destroy something that someone else has built so carefully and so accurately. But this time we broke this carbon part for something worse.
While reliability is key, so too is the need to ensure that the fleet is evenly matched.
The current boat that we're sitting on, which is fully ready to go, weighs around 12.5 tonnes. And the difference across the fleet between the 8 boats is 36 kilograms only on the whole boat. And that 36 kilograms then actually gets corrected, so when the boats are actually sailing, the boats weigh exactly the same. So the performance from the boats comes purely from the crew. For the next edition of the race, these boats will be about 2 knots quicker. Now that's actually due to going to the Southern Ocean and sailing downwind and in different wind strengths. There's a whole new sail wardrobe being added to the boats, which is a refined wardrobe from the last edition, from what the designers have learnt. So the boats will be quicker from that point of view.
Each boat has taken 6,000 man-hours to refit, during which time over 750 parts have been removed, serviced and refitted. By the time the last boat has been launched, the Lisbon boatyard will have clocked up a total of 42,000 man-hours to produce a fleet that is fit for another flat-out lap of the planet. After the break, how do foils work on an America's Cup boat? Plus, upset in Miami at the TP52 Super Series. But first, how the America's Cup defenders slipped onto the wrong side of a fine line. Stay with us to find out. With just weeks to go, teams are tuning up their final race machines for the America's Cup. Thousands of man-hours and millions of dollars have been poured into each boat, and teams are only allowed to build one. So when this happens, heartbeats go through the roof. Fortunately, no crew were injured, and Spithill's team managed to right the boat within 10 minutes and head back to base. And while there'd been no major damage, the capsize was another reminder of the line that teams tread as the clock counts down to the Cup. Break a key component now, and there may not be enough time to fix it. When it comes to America's Cup secrets, dagger board details are top of the list. Get their design right, and winning will look easy. Get it wrong, and each lap of the course will feel like riding a velodrome on flat tyres. So how do Cup foils work, and what are the designers trying to achieve?
One real performance area where we can differentiate ourselves, and hence we put all our research, is the dagger boards and the wetted surface and drag that they entail. The holy grail clearly probably is to try and get these boats to do a complete lap of the course without ever touching down. To understand a sailboat at a really, really fundamental level is we are trying to extract energy from two fluids that are moving at different speeds. So we have wind blowing across the water, and we have effectively two aircraft wings. One operates in the air, which is the big wing sail we see, and the opposite one which opposes those loads in the water. For the boat, the boat weighs about 3 tons with all the sailors on board, so we're lifting that out of the water. The second load we're trying to do is the wing sail is trying to push the boat sideways, and so the vertical part of the board has to resist that force. Essentially, this kind of S-shaped foil that's evolving, and most of the teams seem to have got there, that is simply moving the lift from the wing further outboard on the boat. And so my lift is here, my weight of my boat is here, and the distance between those two times the weight of the boat essentially is the righting moment. So I get more stability. It probably also comes with some drag penalty, so these are where we make the trade-offs. We're seeing boats that foil in much lighter wind, so we can kind of have less power, so we have to make them more efficient. To make them more efficient, to foil at slower speeds, the physical evolution that you could kind of look at and see is that the span of the wings is comparatively much longer than we had back in the 72s. That's putting a lot of difficult work on the structural engineers. We've got this longer, skinnier, more flexible, harder to control kind of foils. The very lightest conditions, we need to be able to race between 6 knots of wind and 25 knots of wind. 6 knots of wind, we really can't fly the hull. So we're 2 hulls in, we're very slow, it's pretty painful. Things happen very, very quickly from there on up. About half a knot of wind later, more wind, and suddenly we have a hull flying, and our speed might go from 6 or 7 knots to 10, 11, 12 knots, like a lot faster suddenly. And then another half knot or a knot later, we're up and foiling. And so we have these huge kind of transitions to navigate. And the sort of optimal foil for each of those modes will be quite different. So that's quite hard to manage across the very light air end of the spectrum. One of the things we're allowed to do in the class this time that we weren't in the 72s is apply what we call rudder differential, but that is have a difference in lift from the leeward side of the boat to the windward side of the boat on the rudder. And you can kind of think of that as the windward rudder kind of pulling down on the boat, which is in a way a little bit like adding crew weight or more righting moment, making the boat more stable. As a general kind of rule of thumb, you could kind of say a less stable foil that's harder to control is probably got less drag associated with it. But if we can't sail it in a kind of nice, stable, accurate kind of way, then that's probably not fast either. So for each board, once it's sort of deployed, we're allowed to rotate it around 2 axes. The secondary axis of cant we can use to sort of modify the orientation of the board in a way that perhaps gives us more or less stability. So if we can go perhaps from a mode which is very unstable but fast to a more stable, easier to sail kind of mode. And can the guy, when he's driving the boat, look around and get his head out of the boat and see the gusts coming? Or is the board so tricky to sail that it requires his complete focus? In terms of the number of boards, we're constrained by the protocol. And that says we're allowed to build 6 boards for our 45-foot test platforms, and then finally 4 boards for the race boat. On top of that, we're allowed to make a certain number of changes. But effectively, for each one of those boards we build, we can make one change to it up to 30% of its weight, which is actually a pretty significant change. Give or take, it's about a 3-month process to build a board. And so if you start counting back from the racing period, giving yourself some time to learn that board and understand it, how to use it in the best way possible, and then put the 3-month building process in front of that. Inevitably, there's a kind of process of discovery in a way that's kind of the fun part of the job, is you do all the theoretical work, you put it on the boat, and without fail, there's some aspect of the performance or design or behaviour that's kind of a surprise and something to learn from.
Meanwhile, as 5 teams were getting to grips with their foils in Bermuda's Great Sound, one was still on its way. Emirates Team New Zealand had opted to conduct its testing and development on home waters in Auckland, keeping their secrets to themselves as long as possible.
We've finished loading the main deck, everything fits, and it was a big relief.
This is the push to the top of the mountain for us, and yeah, I'm getting pretty excited. And this is where it doesn't take much to get you motivated when you realise what's at stake now, and where we're at, because I know we're going to get there. We're going to be really competitive.
After quiet conditions throughout most of the week at the Princesa Sofia Trophy in Palma, the weather turned on for the final medal race day as a 25-knot Mistral swept across the course. Among those revelling in the conditions was the men's 470s, where the racing was tight, just 3 points separating the top 3 boats after the medal race. Spanish sailors Jordi Chamar and Nicolas Rodriguez took third to Carl Fredrik Fock and Marcus Dackhammer from Sweden, who took second. But the stars of this class, Tetsuya Isozaki and Akira Takayanagi from Japan, continued this year's upward trajectory by taking overall victory. Meanwhile, the Finn class was not only enjoying the stiff breeze, but one of several classes using a new winner-takes-all medal race format. A format that suited Swedish sailor Max Salminen, who overtook Turkey's Alkan Kaynar, who had led the series beforehand. In the RSX classes, it was to be a Polish double as Paweł Tarnowski took his first ever major class victory. His teammate, Olympic bronze medalist Sofia Nochetti-Klepaka, not only took gold after scoring no worse than 5th throughout the whole week, but won the event overall. The TP52 fleet won't forget round 2 of the 2017 Super Series in a hurry. 4 days before the event started, one boat had lost her rig. 2 races in and one team were lucky not to have lost the whole boat. Others had different problems. Miami had opened with a bang as the breezy conditions and close quarters racing took their toll. But by the end of the week, the fleet had something else on its mind, a new pecking order. Since 2013, Doug DeVos's Quantum Racing had frequently been the team to beat, winning all but one of the 52 Super Series seasons since then. So when they started 2017 by winning the opening event of the season in Key West, few were surprised. But the front of the fleet can be a precarious place to hang out, especially when the pack astern is learning new tricks. Among those with an eye on the silverware was Alberto Roma's Italian-flagged Azzurra. Having won the series in 2012 and 2015, his team knows what success tastes like. Last season saw them runners-up, so this season they've set their heart on a win. And it didn't take them long to make their point. After 6 races, they'd finished no worse than second.
We are happy because we will recover our upwind speed, so that gives us confidence to do whatever we need to do on the race course, trusting that the speed will be working for us.
Another team eyeing their sights on the top spot was Harm Muller-Spreer's crew aboard Platoon. Having taken second in Key West, they too were keen to take pole. As part of that plan, tactician John Kostecki and mainsail trimmer Dirk de Ridder joined the crew for Miami. Both came with America's Cup and Volvo Ocean Race wins under their belts and are no strangers to looking critically at a team's performance.
It seemed like our light air speed really improved a lot from Key West. We felt that that was an opportunity after Key West, and so we spent a lot of time working on that. I think our process is working.
But so too was Azores. The Italian team was on a roll.
I think Zuro made a really good job this week, but for the rest of the pack, and I mean the leading group, everything is still possible. I were realistic. We could achieve the second place, but we can lose as well, going back to the fifth place or whatever. I mean, there's still a slight chance of winning it, but I mean, a lead of 10 points, that's hard to beat.
Azura's points buffer carried them through to win the event, while placing them in the lead so far this season. But while his team may have turned a corner in Miami, skipper Guillermo Parada was taking nothing for granted before the next event in Italy in May.
Glory doesn't last forever, but at least we'll make it last for 2 months, which is the biggest break of the season.
A big break and a moment to consider a new pecking order. Next month, the time for talk is fast closing as the clock counts down to the 35th America's Cup. We preview the action in Bermuda.